Hey everybody, Dr. Guy White of the dissertationmentor.com, and I am once again in front of my favorite coffee shop hustling for time because the morning for me is like the only time where stuff happens. I don't know if it's like that with you, but I know that when I was writing my dissertation, the mission was to be at my office working. I rented an office space. I rented a very small office space from my father-in-law, and it was like a closet, a pretty big closet, and I had to get in there by 8:30 in the morning. If I didn't get in there and start working by then, before I checked email, before I checked social media, before I had any phone conversations, little would happen. So quite similarly, here I am, and I'm trying to get as much done as I can early in the morning because that's when the magic happens. And I want to welcome you to this video about how do I choose a dissertation methodology, because most candidates think they know. They think they know what methodology they're doing. And if you're watching this, I'm not suggesting necessarily that you don't know what methodology you're going to be using, but I would suggest that chances are whatever you think you're doing now, if you haven't submitted a proposal yet, chances are what you think you're going to do is probably not in the end where you are going to land. And so what I'd like to do is get you to the right landing spot now, as opposed to you having to have the quote-unquote come to Jesus meeting later on with your chair, because that's such a painful conversation. It's so painful to think that you're doing well and that you're done, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get hit with something really surprising. So, I mean, you've probably experienced that, right? Where you feel like you've been doing well and you've made progress, and then when you meet with the chair, they start asking you all these weird questions that start revealing hidden requirements about the dissertation that you thought you had a full handle on. And it's almost like if you knew the language, if you knew what the questions were ahead of time, if you knew what the roadmap was, this would not have been an issue. And that's what the dissertation process can be like. It can be very confusing because often these hidden requirements don't come up until there's a problem. And I think the largest concern is that this process of writing this dissertation can take a very long time if we don't address it in a very strategic way. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, is strategy. And so my hope is, if you're watching this video, you've seen my others. These are my kids, of course, the people I want to spend the most time that I can with. And this presentation is going to lead you towards, in my mind, the best $100 you could ever spend related to your dissertation. There's lots of people out there jockeying for your money, and I'm not going to ask you for any money in this video, but I'm going to point out some resources that you should be using that will cost a little bit of coin, and it will save you bundles of time. And if you have kids, you'll be spending a lot more time with them if that's your thing. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I've worked with dozens and dozens of committees and dissertation writers, candidates, learners, mentees, whatever you call them. I've worked with them all. And so when I'm speaking to you in this video, it comes from this practical knowledge that I've done this many, 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 many times, and I've led many dissertation candidates across that red carpet into graduation. Now, hopefully this slide is not unfamiliar to you. This is a synthesis matrix. If you have not done this yet, I highly encourage that you stop this video and go watch my first videos. You'll see one that's about an hour long. You can go to the dissertationmentor.com and to see that video. And so that way, you can figure out, what is it like to build your dissertation cave? How do you go into the cave? And how do you get lots of crazy work done getting a massive synthesis matrix done for your literature review? So that way you're ready to have this conversation. Now, if you're curious and you want to keep watching, no problem. You'll get a lot from this video anyway. And so today we're going to be talking about how do you choose the right methodology given what you want to accomplish. And there's often a moment when working with a candidate, or you're the candidate. So there's a time when you're working with your chair where your chair stops suddenly humoring you. There's like a part of your relationship where they're just kind of going, that sounds great. And then you try to submit something to them, and then all of a sudden they start asking you all these strange questions. And you've been doing a mixed method study for like a year before you met this chair, and now you've met this chair and they don't want you to be doing a mixed method study. and you don't understand why, or you think you're doing a phenomenology or a case study or experimental, correlational, whatever, and all of a sudden you're getting these strange questions that are pointing towards another type of methodology. And so we want to talk today about really what are the steps to choosing the right methodology from the get-go, so that way you're perfectly fine. And so let me tell you why it's so important that we choose the right methodology. Each methodology has a specific purpose. And you'll hear your chair or someone in your doctoral life saying a lot about this thing called alignment, which is where the purpose of your study actually aligns to the way that you're going to be collecting your data, and it also aligns to the research that you've done. We'll leave that out for the time being. But it's almost like if I'm going to test my car battery died a few weeks ago. If I'm going to test my car battery, I'm not going to use a stethoscope to test out that car battery, right? So it's the same kind of philosophy. We want to be mindful of the purpose of the way that we collect data. And then finally, we want to talk about really, like, each specific study has a specific flavor, right? Each study your study could involve conversation. It can involve experimentation. Some types of methodology look at data from afar. So you want to know what type of flavor the study is as well. And many of you watching this, you're probably thinking, I don't want to interview people, or I'm not a numbers person, or can I really experiment on people? And of course the answer is usually no. So we're attending to these questions early on, and I think the most important, and not to scare you, well, you should be scared, is that if you choose the wrong methodology, it can cost you between 18 months and 36 months of your life. That's 3 years of your life. A great example of this is often candidates think that they're doing cause and effect related studies. And unfortunately, if they actually end up going down that road, it can take them a significant amount of time to finish. And so I want to make sure that we're sparing that for you. So these 6 steps, I think there's 6, maybe there's 5. These 5 or 6 steps will guide you through the process of choosing the right methodology. And if I don't have a 6th step, I'll give you a bonus step at the end. So step number 1 is we need to establish what your field's norm is. And by your field, I mean, what type of degree program are you in? Are you in a Doctor of Education? Are you in a Doctor of Healthcare Administration? Are you in a degree related to anthropology, sociology, psychology? I mean, what type of degree are you pursuing? What field are you in? If you're in the humanities or the social sciences, specifically, education, psychology, sociology, administration, those types of worlds, for the most part, then the whole world is really open to you. Really, you can nearly choose any methodology that's appropriate for your degree program, and we'll get to that in a second. You can choose nearly any methodology. So the whole world, we start with the whole world is open to you. However, if you're in the sciences, that is, you're in chemistry, engineering, things like this, your options become more and more minimized because of the reality that, we want to make sure that, with an engineering degree, for example, you're not going to be often using a social sciences frame. You're not going to be doing lots of interviews in the engineering department at your college or university. So we want to choose the right one from the get-go. So the way to establish this, like to figure out what is your field's norm, is to contact your librarian. Do not skip that step. You need a relationship with your librarian anyway. And I want you to call him or her on the phone and ask them, how do I get access to the 50 most recent studies, or dissertations better, published by my degree program? Now, if your degree program is brand new or your school's brand new, you'll ask them very similarly, there's a Doctor of Education program at USC or at some other school. How do I access their 50 most recent published dissertations? And they'll show you that. What you're going to do is take a look at each one of those, all 50, if you can. Definitely no less than 25, but 50 is a great sweet spot number. And this process is actually pretty quick because you're going to have a list and you're just going to do some clicking. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the end of chapter 1 where the purpose statement is. And you're also going to go to chapter 3 where it actually discusses the methodology. And you're just going to write down what methodologies appear there. In fact, what is that going to look like? Well, step 2, what you're going to do is you're going to create a list. You're going to actually examine that list. What methodology was there? Was it quantitative or qualitative? And that's kind of the most basic question you're asking, but the more important question is what methodology did they use? Did they use a correlational study? Did they use mixed methods? Did they use ex post facto, Delphi? Did they use a case study? Did they engage in a case study, I should say? Phenomenology. These are all the types of things that you should be looking for. And I want you to notice what that meant for that study. Like specifically, if they had correlational or mixed methods, what did that mean for the study? What did that look like? If they used phenomenology or case study, what did that look like? How did that play out in the study? What were the steps involved? Chances are, and I don't know why my slide dropped off here, but chances are, if you're going to see lots of studies that stay away from correlational and mixed methods. And if it is mixed methods, that means something very specific, something very different than perhaps you understand right now. And so I challenge you to first take these 2 steps and go look. Now, what do you do from there? Well, after you establish the norm of what is normal within your field of study, like for example, you might notice that in your field of study, no one does correlational research, or out of the 51 did correlational research. Chances are you want to engage more in the norm for your research study, for your dissertation. Engage in the norm for your dissertation. Do crazy, ethical but crazy stuff, your life's work outside your dissertation. And so now that you've narrowed down, for example, that lots of people are doing case studies, lots of people are doing phenomenology, lots of people are doing Delphi studies, what you're going to do is you're going to get your hands on what I call a level 1 research manual. Now there's 2 that I recommend, 2 flavors. Flavor number 1 is the qualitative flavor, which is Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design, Choosing Among 5 Approaches by John Cresswell. John Cresswell is a legend in the research world, and his books are just laid out so plainly that it will be quite simple for you to see what is involved in each of the approaches for these methodologies. And for the quantitative flavor, you have Research Design, Qualitative, Quantitative, and Mixed Methods approaches by John Cresswell. If you're doing a qualitative approach, don't skip on that first book, the 5 Approaches book. That is, I think, by far the best book you can get your hands on. If you're delving into quantitative or mixed methods, the second book is for you. And on your screen, you might have some links appearing to access these books. Now do note that if you do click those links, you'll get the books for the same low price you normally would have, but I'll get a small commission for you clicking those links and or purchasing those books. You're helping out my family if you do that. So do know that that is the case, and I would appreciate it if you take a look at those. Step 4, now that you have those books, so you have those books, now don't skip this. If you don't have those books, there's no point in moving forward. You will not be able to finish your dissertation without a great research manual. That's that $100 I'm talking about. You need a great research manual to finish your dissertation. So get one of those. And then what I want you to do is look at the study approaches and make a methodology matrix. Like let's say you're thinking about doing a mixed methods study. Well, what does that mean? You write down in the methodology column, you write down mixed methods. And according to your level 1 book, the author, what's the essential question that a mixed method study is approaching? What's the collection method? I mean, what is collected? How is it collected? Over what period of time is it collected? What's the sample size minimum? I mean, some of these studies have a sample size minimum that's quite significant. For example, the study I engaged with in my dissertation, I think the minimum sample size was 112 people. And of course, what's the relationship of the sample to the larger population? Some dissertations, some studies, I should say, Their goal is to generalize to a larger audience, that is to generalize, to a larger population, to say that if we look at the small group, this is probably also happening in the large group. In some methodologies, that's not the case. In some methodologies, there is no generalization to the larger population. So we want to know that. If we look at the small group, does that mean anything about a larger group? Same thing for a case study. What's the essential question for a case study? What's the collection methods? What is looked at? How is it looked at? How is it collected? Over what time period is it collected? What's the sample size? And again, the relationship, and so on. So you get the idea that by breaking this up, by breaking your methodology up into these 5 essential areas, you're going to start seeing what's involved with this type of study. Lots of students, lots of candidates walk forward with this idea they're going to be doing correlational research. And if they look at the requirements for correlational research in these 5 questions, they're going to realize, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this within the time period that I have to finish my dissertation, at least within the timeline that you desire. So just be wary of that. And step 5, now that you've narrowed it down, you know that you perhaps want to do a case study, or you want to do a phenomenological study. I love that word, phenomenological. Or you're going to do a mixed method study. You're going to find a level 2, what I call a deep cut research manual. That is a research manual that only deals with that specific single research methodology. So for example, if you're doing a phenomenological study, there's Phenomenological Research Methods by Clark Moustakis. I think that's how you pronounce the gentleman's name. If you're doing a case study, the art of case study research. And ethnography, step by step. These are some of my favorites that I've utilized in the past before. And again, if you click one of the links, you're helping out my family. I do get a commission from that. Check out those books. I mean, if you're going to do this, again, you need to have those books. Best $100 you'll ever spend by getting these books, because you need those. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to write chapter 2. You're not going to be able to make a proposal because you're not going to know the requirements, the step-by-step requirements of your study. Now, here's a moment of truth. There is a step 6. What you're going to do is you're going to create a list of steps. So based upon your 2 research manuals, your level 1 and your level 2 research manual, what are the steps for your study? What do you have to do to make this study actually come to fruition? Step by step, what does the study have to do? And you can actually make a list of steps. And in fact, in chapter 3, eventually, you're going to have to actually list out those steps and talk about each one of those individual steps. So this has been a kind of a middle-of-the-road length video, not too short, not too long. And what I just want to say is, the number one thing is, if you're not signed up for the DissertationMentor.com's free videos, I encourage you really to go there and take a look. Progress is made because you're engaging with this process regularly. And if you're not engaging with this process regularly, you're not going to make progress. And so my encouragement to you is to get in, to sign up for the DissertationMentor.com. It's free, and get these videos regularly, so that way it's following your development and you can access these videos. You can go onto YouTube and see the rest of my videos as well. Share this with a friend, and for heaven's sake, leave me a comment so I get to know how this is being received. What questions do you still have? I read every single comment, and I'd love to answer them for you. Hey, have a fantastic day. Best wishes on your progress today.